Hello, I'm Dr. Marc Allan Feldman, and I'm running for the Libertarian nomination for President of the United States. Two questions I get asked. One, why am I running for president? And why is it that I say that I have no fear? So I wrote this essay to explain this because short answers in a debate is just not the format to be able to get the message across. So I wrote this essay, How to Make a Miracle, or Why I Am Running for President. So I'm going to tell a joke, then I'm going to tell a true story, then I'm going to tell my story, and I'll end with a message. Once there was a kind and pious Jew named Goldberg who always struggled with money. Every night he would say a prayer to win the lottery, but every day went by with no winnings. One Sabbath day he prayed harder than ever. God, I've been so good and charitable in my life. What do I have to do to win the lottery? A divine voice came down from the heavens. Goldberg, buy a ticket. Well, when I was a medical student at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, I was having a talk with my rabbi. I told him how I saw a surgeon throw aside an instrument and yell at his scrub nurse, "Don't give me what I ask for, give me what I need." My rabbi said that this reminded him of the story. It was before the rise of the Nazis. Hannah was a child sent by her struggling Jewish family in Europe to the United States for the opportunity of a better life. In Baltimore, living with a loving aunt, Hannah got a few letters from Poland with family news. She cherished every one. Then the letters stopped coming. A survivor from her hometown in Poland said the town was destroyed and her entire family was wiped out, killed in the Nazi concentration camps. But Hannah was a survivor, and she would rebuild her life. She promised herself she would marry and have many children to extend the thread that the Nazis had cruelly tried to cut. Hannah married Saul, and they built a beautiful and loving home. But the years went by, and despite the efforts of all the specialists, they were childless. Eventually, they decided to adopt. A Jewish agency in New York had told them that an infant had just been given up for adoption. But when they traveled to New York, they found that the grandmother had decided to keep the child. It was a big disappointment. The agency asked, since they were already up, would they consider visiting the orphanage because there were many children who needed good homes. They went and they saw many beautiful children. There was an 8-year-old named Miriam who had a special charm and appeal. But Hannah's heart was set on a baby. She didn't want to be the second mother. She wanted her family to be the only family the child would know. A year went by with no prospects for an infant. Hannah began to have second thoughts and reconsidered that special child, Miriam. They called the agency to see if she was still available. Yes, but there was a complication. Her little brother Moshe was found and joined her. They couldn't be separated. Would Hannah and Saul consider adopting both of them? Well, they returned to New York, met the two children, and immediately decided yes. Hannah and Saul were excited to show the children their new home. Little Moshe was shy, but Miriam was fascinated by the new and beautiful surroundings and investigated everything. Suddenly, she stopped and seemed confused. "How did you get a picture of my grandmother on your piano?" Hannah smiled and said, "That's not your grandmother. That's a picture of my mother, taken in Poland." Miriam then reached into the small bag she brought from the orphanage and showed Hannah a faded photo. "See? I have the same picture. You want to see a picture of my mother?" "Sarah," Hannah began to cry as she saw the picture of her own sister. "How did they tell you my mother's name?" Miriam asked. Hannah had adopted her own orphan niece and nephew. They were her family, her own. Sometimes you're not given what you ask for. You're given what you need. I apologize that my story is a little longer, but it also starts in Baltimore. I met my wife Ann one morning when we were both parked in the employee garage at Johns Hopkins. As she was getting out of her car, I saw she was carrying a stack of catalogs from the IKEA store that had just opened. I recently bought a condo and I had nearly no furniture. She gave me a catalog and I noted on her name tag, Ann Kushner, BSN RN. Just before I entered the building, a colleague of mine came over and said, "The girl who gave you that catalog, "You must think she's pretty special." I said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Because you left your car running." Anyhow, we had seen each other around. The IV therapy office where she used to work was right across the hall from the anesthesiology control center where I used to hang out. In those days, anesthesiologists were often the IV therapists of last resort. When no one else could start an IV, they called us. But Ann had moved to the coronary care unit, taking care of heart patients. Our first date was in October of 1988. We got engaged in February and then married that June. We had two beautiful boys, Aaron and Abram, in 1990 and 1991. Then we took a breather. In 1996, the third pregnancy was complicated and difficult, but we were assured that everything seemed okay. Alec was born full term and apparently healthy at our community hospital, and we were all very relieved. Ann was holding the baby on the second day, but something was wrong. The nurses didn't say anything, but Ann knew. Her experience as a CCU nurse and her intuition as a mother left no doubt. When she told the nurses, "Take him back to neonatal now and call the doctor stat," they were not going to give her any argument. Something was very wrong. They found the femoral pulses were gone and our beautiful son was going into shock. Already, the kidneys and liver were failing. I was with the resident physician in the neonatal unit. What Alec needed was a prostaglandin infusion to open up the fetal circulation and restore the blood flow in his body. The neonatologist on call was on his way in, but it would be at least an hour. The resident was unable to start an IV, so they couldn't start the prostaglandin infusion. I said, "If it's okay, I'm an anesthesiologist, and I could probably start the IV for you." The resident said, "You know you're not allowed to do that," he said. But eventually, he decided to let me take a chance. He said, "Everything you need is in that cart, and I'm not looking." After the prostaglandin infusion ran, the pulses came back and the blood test began to normalize. Alec was transferred to Johns Hopkins. He was stable, but tests showed he had a rare and severe heart defect. This particular heart defect was known sometimes to be associated with an immune deficiency, a lower than normal level of T cells. But it was usually mild and resolved with time. Rarely, it could be severe or even fatal, but the pediatricians at Hopkins told us they never saw the severe form of the immune deficiency along with the severe form of the cardiac defect. They did a T cell test, but the results came back inconclusive. The report said that the stains didn't work. The pediatric heart surgery team at Hopkins was consulted and was ready to schedule Alec for surgery. I reviewed the latest literature and consulted the best experts I could. The surgery could be done at Hopkins, but they only did about one a year. At Boston's Children's Hospital, the surgeon was doing several every month and publishing excellent results. It's rare to transfer a newborn baby away from Johns Hopkins for emergency surgery, but that's exactly what we did. And it was a very good decision, and the corrective surgery was successful. It was during his recovery that we got the next bad news. Alec had the rarest and most severe form of the immune defect. The first test actually was not inconclusive. They saw no staining because Alec had no T cells. As Alec was getting ready for discharge, the Harvard immunologists came to see us in Alec's room. The news was not good. There was no known treatment for Alec's fatal condition. They said they discussed the situation with the chairman, who said that when we got back to Hopkins, there was a Dr. Markert at either Duke or UNC who was doing new research in this area on thymic tissue transplants. Just then, my wife answered the phone and interrupted. "Excuse me, Mark, but there's a Dr. Markert on the phone. She got your email and she wanted to discuss Alec's case with us." When we returned to Baltimore, Alec's case was taken on by a brilliant young hematologist-oncologist, Dr. Allen Chen. Dr. Chen reviewed all of Alec's information and all the most recent research findings. It had never been done before, but if one of Alec's brothers was an HLA identical match, it was possible that a simple blood transfusion could engraft and correct his immune deficiency. Dr. Chen's team got approval for a single patient research project. The treatment was successful. His immune system was repaired, and the results were published in the medical journal, The Lancet. Alec thrived. He had his medical challenges along the way, but nothing that we couldn't handle. When a great opportunity opened up for me at the Cleveland Clinic, we moved, and Alec adjusted very well. He developed a wonderful, engaging personality and was very much loved by his friends and family. He was a very hard worker and a straight-A student. He loved creative writing, including some poetry. At age 12, he wrote this poem, Life. Life is life. There's no other synonym. It evolves to today. It may lie, but not forever, because life is the everlasting cycle of always being born and death. And that's the cycle of life no one should fear, because you live it every day of your life. Alec was a miracle child. He did a wonderful job at his bar mitzvah, chanting from the scrolls in the ancient Hebrew and giving a humorous and inspiring speech. He graduated middle school as the valedictorian of the class. He was an inspiration. That was when I got involved with the Libertarian Party. Growing up in Washington, D.C., I knew politicians, and there was never one I wanted to support. I was a well-informed and engaged non-voter. I had never even registered to vote because I couldn't really see a way to make a difference. But I learned that miracles can happen, and when I got the call asking me to run for the Ohio Attorney General, I accepted. With minimum time and money in a four-way race, I received over 100,000 votes, which is a lot more than my friends and family. The Libertarian Party was different, truly a party of principle. Anything could happen. But everything changed in June of 2011. Alec developed nausea, loss of appetite, and began to look jaundiced. It could have been many things, but it was cancer. Alec's immune system was repaired, but with one major defect. He had no immunity to the Epstein-Barr virus, the virus that causes mononucleosis. His viral infection went to his immune system and became an aggressive non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It would have been difficult to treat in any child, but with his heart condition and fragile immune system, there were no good conventional options. Memorial and Sloan Kettering in New York had a potential solution. They had a bank of T-cell lines specifically targeting Epstein-Barr virus-associated tumor cells. We took Alec to New York. It took time to find a cell line that would work, but they did. All the tumors began to regress, and Alec's immune system returned to normal, towards normal. By December of 2011, Alec came home to Cleveland to spend Hanukkah with family, to return to New York as an outpatient. We were back on the same roller coaster. The cell lines that had kept Alec's cancer under control did not put him into remission. That's when we heard from Dr. Markert. Over the past 15 years, she had improved the thymic tissue transplant therapy and would accept Alec as an experimental subject at Duke in North Carolina. He completed the surgery, but before the transplant could fully engraft, Alec's cancer changed to a super aggressive form. He was back in New York and deteriorating fast. He became comatose, and we were told he would never wake up. We were offered only comfort care and told to make his final arrangements. But I felt that aggressive chemotherapy was still an option. There was nothing to lose. But the only center that would take him and try was back in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins. Alec was directly admitted to the brand new pediatric intensive care unit. His physician would be a senior hematologist-oncologist, Dr. Alan Chen. Yes, the same Dr. Chen who saved Alec's life 16 years earlier. Alec was intubated, put on a ventilator, with continuous hemodialysis and cardiac support. He was sick as a human being could possibly be and still be alive. The first weekend was one continuous resuscitation. Hopkins PICU has an unusual tradition of openness in patient care, including all staff and patients on rounds and daily decisions. Since I was not only a parent, but a physician with ICU training, including in the Hopkins PICU, I had a very unusual role. Alec had his own father and ICU doctor attending him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I lived in that ICU. Alec responded well to the aggressive chemotherapy. He continued to improve, woke up, and was extubated. He felt good, and he asked when he could be able to go home. We had our son back. It was a miracle. We had 2 weeks with him, awake and responsive. We let him know how much we loved him, and every day he let us know his love for us. But then his cancer recurred with a vengeance. He became comatose again, and was put back on the ventilator. The next 57 days were the most difficult of my life, maybe the most difficult in anyone's life ever. He again received T-cell therapy, flown in from New York. He had more chemotherapy. The cancer had affected his heart, lungs, bone marrow, every organ system. He had several cardiac arrests and resuscitations, and I was there and participated in every one. It was July 2nd, 2012, the day before Alec's 16th birthday. Alec was stable for the moment, but I couldn't take the roller coaster anymore. I knew the constant stress and fear was going to kill me. I remember saying, God, you and I have to have a talk. Let's go get a cup of coffee. So I left the ICU and I walked to the coffee shop. God, I have done my best. I can do no more. I am completely filled with fear for my son's life. This fear is going to kill me. It's up to you now. I can't say if it was stress or sleep deprivation or whether it was a divine message, but I heard a voice in my head say, there is no reason to fear. At that moment, all of my fear just left. It was like standing in a blizzard for hours, being chilled to the bones, then jumping into a warm bath and having all the chill just leave and a sense of comfort come. I didn't know if my son would survive, but I knew then that I would survive. Since then, it's been nearly 4 years, and in that time, I have never had a moment of fear of anything. Alec then had a series of 7 different life-threatening complications, each of which would have been fatal if not for a miraculous response to therapy. But overall, his condition continued to deteriorate. But there was one more chance. His HLA identical brother had converted to become immune to the Epstein-Barr virus. It would be possible to do another blood transfusion, similar to the one that saved him as a baby. Do we have one more miracle coming? On Wednesday, August 1st, Alec got the transfusion, and we waited as he continued to further deteriorate. Over the week, despite maximal life support, he was unresponsive. His blood pressure became unmeasurably low. We lost our son on August the 7th, 2012. The human mind is always searching for meaning, to make sense of the world. This is the greatest challenge to faith when terrible things happen. It forces us to ask why. Why all the wonderful miracles? A wonderful story with such a lousy ending. These are the questions that try the soul. In 2014, I came across this passage by Rainer Marie Rilke, written in 1903. I would like to beg you, dear sir, as well as I can, to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart and to try to love the questions as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which you could not be given to you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday in the far future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. Could I live the question? Could there be some meaning in this roller coaster of depression and miracles? Is it just a coincidence that I'm a libertarian, that my neurosurgeon colleague, Dr. Ben Carson, had early success as a Republican candidate, that the most powerful tool for controlling people is fear, fear of terrorists, fear of drugs, fear of Muslims, fear of immigrants, fear of guns. The Libertarian Party has been asking for a special candidate with a household name, solid government experience, and great fundraising ability. But what I have to offer is just a man who believes in miracles, a man with no name recognition, no government experience, no fundraising ability, and no fear. How do you make a miracle happen? Start by asking for what you want and see what you get. Sometimes you're not given what you ask for, you're given what you really need. So don't ask me if I'm serious about running for president. I am. And don't ask me if I think I'm a viable candidate for president. Of course I am. Because all it takes is a miracle. Thanks for listening.